It was an old hotel that had seen better days. The paint on the walls was peeling, the carpets were stained, and the furniture was old and worn. But despite its shabby appearance, it was still open for business. People still came to stay there, either because they couldn't afford anything better, or because they were drawn to the hotel's dark history. The hotel was rumored to be haunted, with stories of ghostly apparitions and strange noises echoing through its halls. Some said that a murder had taken place there many years ago, and that the victim's spirit still lingered on, seeking revenge on those who dared to stay in the hotel. Despite these rumors, a young couple, Tom and Emily, decided to spend the night in the hotel. They were thrill seekers, always looking for the next adventure, and the thought of staying in a haunted hotel excited them. When they arrived, they were surprised to find that they were the only guests in the hotel. The receptionist gave them the key to their room and warned them to be careful, but they just laughed it off. They were too excited to be scared. As they made their way to their room, they noticed that the hotel was eerily quiet. The only sound was the creaking of the floorboards beneath their feet. When they reached their room, they opened the door and stepped inside. The room was small and dingy, with peeling wallpaper and a musty smell. The bed was old and creaky, and the sheets were stained. But despite its shabby appearance, Tom and Emily were still excited to be there. As the night wore on, they started to notice strange things happening in the room. Objects would move on their own, and they could hear strange noises coming from the walls. But they brushed it off as just their imagination. But then, in the middle of the night, they were awakened by a loud banging noise coming from the hallway. It sounded like someone was trying to break down their door. They got out of bed and cautiously made their way to the door, but when they opened it, there was no one there. They shrugged it off and went back to bed, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They tried to ignore it and went back to sleep. But then, in the early hours of the morning, they were awakened by a blood-curdling scream coming from the room next door. They got out of bed and cautiously made their way to the door, but when they opened it, there was no one there. They tried to go back to sleep, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. And then, they heard footsteps coming from the hallway. They got out of bed and cautiously made their way to the door, but when they opened it, there was no one there. They went back to bed, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone in the room. They felt a cold breath on the back of their necks, and then they heard a whisper in their ear. "Get out," it said. They jumped out of bed and ran out of the room, never looking back. As they made their way to the exit, they could hear footsteps following them. But when they turned around, there was no one there. They made it out of the hotel and never looked back. They knew that they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. The hotel was not just haunted, it was cursed, and anyone who dared to stay there would never leave alive. From that day on, the hotel was abandoned. No one ever stayed there again, and it remained empty, a silent reminder of the horrors that lay within its walls.